today, the idea is for us to explore a little bit, or for you to leave with understanding how you can possibly start to look at embedding safeguarding into your organizational culture. So either whether you're doing it well and you need to increase that strength, or whether you're just getting started. We will also look at increasing understanding and realistic scope and limits within safeguarding. And then we will see if there's a few practical do's and don'ts that we can at least give you to take away to keep that thought process going and starting to reflect on what is possible inside your organization. You'll see that in particular, we mention organizational culture. And that's because culture eats strategy, you may have heard, but in this case, policy for breakfast. And what we mean here is that safeguarding must be lived in the daily behaviors and not just the documents. So more often than not, we might have the materials, we might have the resources. Some of you said in the Menti that you have some practices, but they're not embedded. And embedding safeguarding into your organization is absolutely about culture. And this is where putting more and more emphasis, different opportunities to explore safety in the workplace or with the people that you work with to practice embedding and creating that culture. This can be from having leadership modeling those behaviors, the way that you approach your recruitment processes, the different trainings that you offer, the different mental health and well-being provisions that are inside your organization, or just the amount that you hear and see appropriate language or safeguarding related actions inside the work that you do. So as we know, we want to use these webinars and these spaces to get a little bit more understanding across the spectrum of the organizations, as well as to be able to learn and build on the best practices that exist. Therefore, in typical fashion, we will jump into breakouts in a moment, where I want you to explore with the people in the room, bearing in mind that the Menti, we have a wide spectrum of people to learn from and to help other people learn, is to look a little bit at where do you already see safeguarding already embedded in your organization. So these are those things that we mentioned at the beginning, the policy, the paperwork, the processes, but also what culture and lived behaviors, attitudes, approaches do you already see inside your organization? And then secondly, where is it missing? So what's missing in your organization when it comes to policy, paperwork, and processes, as well as then those actions, attitudes, behaviors, and the way it works. I will now already post these questions in the chat so you can copy them over, ready so you can use them in the breakouts before I divide us there. Give me 1 second. There we go. You have the questions now in the chat. And what we're going to do is really, I encourage you, this is the only breakout we're going to have. So we really encourage you to dive deep and use the time to talk with the different people who represent different parts of the organizations, whether it's hosting, sending, volunteers, NAs, to answer these questions and get into the nitty-gritty, because this is how we will learn more from and build on the experience that we have in the room. Do you have any questions before we get into things? No, I don't see any questions. You're free to raise your hand and ask for help at any point when I open the room, so when you get started. And you can also come back to the main room should you get a technical difficulty or you have further questions. Okay, so we're going to set the rooms for 20 minutes and you'll have a 60-minute countdown for the room to close so that you can come back and you finish and wrap up your conversations. Okay, we see you in 20 minutes.
Just for you to know, because many of you have a lot of experience already, some other not so much experience, but let's contextualize. Let's go now to our document that we were working with, which is the guidelines for safeguarding that were published last year. So for this, we are going to go to the European Solidarity Core Reality, and we are going. Maybe if you have the chance to see it, you have this triangle of responsibility. So I would like to go there. For some of you are obvious things to know, but let's be in the same spot. I think that's quite important before we go to the do's and the don'ts. So in our triangle of responsibility, you have 3 points. The upper one will be the volunteer, so the person we are taking care of in our organizations. We have the sending slash support organization to the left, to the right, whatever you want to put it. In this case, it's to the left, seen from the computer. And then you have the hosting organization or the lead organization, also known as organizing organization. And also in these cases, we have the mentors or whoever is doing the mentoring in those organizations. It is quite important to make a parenthesis. It's not the same to say the mentor and mentoring because mentoring goes beyond to the role of the mentor. But that's another chapter that we can have in some other webinar about mentoring. Exactly. And the best thing to work with these things is to work with practical examples. So we're going to move to a practical example from the mental health. Um, I don't know if an easy one. I think there is no easy one. And Susanna said it really, really nicely. This is a perpetuum mobile. This is a effort that you always have to do, and it keep on moving and moving and moving, and it's a never-ending story. But at the same time, it's also a way that we are a little bit more bulletproof. So I have this example, and we have, as I said, our triangle of responsibility, and we have to focus a little bit about what is within our influence, within our scope, and what is outside of this. So we have this example, a volunteer tells a mentor that she has been experiencing anxiety, trouble sleeping, and feeling overwhelmed, and that she needs some mental health support. So let's have a little bit of a discussion here in the plenary. What is within the scope, for example, of the volunteer? What is the volunteer doing by communicating this? What is in the scope of the sending or support organization that is not in the place this is happening? And what is the role or the scope of the coordination or coordinator organization, lead organization, host organization, mentor, whoever is in contact with the volunteer? So let's give us some minutes to think about this. We have answers, but let's see if we are in the same page. We are in the same triangle or in another triangle. So I give you a little bit of time to see it and maybe to give some ideas what is within the scope of these different three roles. You don't need to say the three of them. You can also say just one if you want to. Otherwise, I will give you answers, but let's see if we're in the same spot. Okay, we have a shy crowd today. First of all, there's no mistakes, but I think we don't need to force it. We can keep on moving in this. So let's go to the first scope. That will be the volunteer scope. The volunteer did pretty much what she has to do. Yeah, she shared her concerns, uh, went through proper channels within the mentor or the person responsible, follow for guidance. What should I do? What can I do? And also realizes and seeks that her well-being is at risk. So she's doing something about this. What will happen with the sending organization? When they know about this, the sending organization, as I said before, is outside, is not in this on the spot. So that means the sending organization has to ensure the preparation of the person before she was coming in order that she knows which channels she will take, like she did. She was well prepared, let's put it like this. And but also the support organization or sending organization has to be quite clear and ensure that they still have communication with the volunteer. It happens a lot that sending organizations forget their role somehow in safeguarding. They send and they don't really have too much contact with the volunteers. which is, well, it is what it is, but it would be really good in the sake of safeguarding of having a really responsive triangle that the sending organizations also have contact with their volunteers. The sending organization also provides mediation if there is some kind of problem between the hosting, the lead organization. You know that, but it's good to say it. And support for any matter may happen in the safeguarding issues. So that's the role of the sending organization. It's not that little. It is still responsibility. But we have our third one, which is the hosting organization or the lead organization. And they have to provide daily oversight, and they follow as well their policy that we were talking about. So that policy is the one that is now relevant for them, and has to be able to create safe spaces, to create as well responses that come quickly when the volunteer has. That's the worst it can happen. Yeah, when a volunteer has a problem and an answer comes and said, yes, we will give you an answer. They keep on waiting. That sometimes is difficult. So in mental health or other kind of problems, a prompt answer is key because that also gives the security to the person. I can trust these people. Um, yeah, and also you have to be able to be adaptive enough, depending of the person and depending of the situation. Quite important as well to say in this stadium is sometimes it takes a lot of working hours. Depending of the problem, it may be necessary to have a daily briefing with the volunteer. And that's quite important because we have organizations who have 3, 4, 5 people working there, maybe even some organizations who are 2 persons working there. And there's organization with 50, 60, 70 persons working there. So depending on that, it has to be quite clear that when the moment arises, this could also take a lot of time resources. Yeah, I think these basic things that most of you know, but I think it's important to mention, are what create the triangle of responsibility and is what is also graphically in our safeguarding guidelines, is also exposed there and is to be followed in a way, or is a good recommendation how this works in the European Solidarity Corps, aka European volunteering in this case. I give it back to Xian now.
Great, thank you, Miguel. And we race through this because a lot of it is just confirming what you already know, but putting it into the right contextual places. Sometimes it can feel a little bit whose role is what, where, when, and that is often where we get caught up in safeguarding responsibilities, is we might make assumptions that it's somebody else's role, or we might take a step too far when it's not within the appropriate means either. And sometimes that means we don't do anything at all. So what we want to do now is a very casual game. It's not an exam, but you will all have on Zoom at the bottom of your screen the reaction button, and there's a tick for green, and there's a cross that is red. So we're going to play a bit of do's and don'ts, and I'm going to share a statement on the screen each time, and then you can just react whether you think you should do this with a green tick, or you shouldn't do this with a red X. I am not following to check if you're right or wrong. It is purely a learning exercise, so please do not worry and play along with me because, yeah, it's part of the fun of it as well, learning together. So just to make sure you feel you have access, on the bottom of your screen, there should be a love heart shape that says react. And if you click on there, you'll see more options. If you don't have it, there will be 3 dots where it says more, and you can click there and it'll enable your reactions. I will show you, I have a green tick now. I say yes, and then I now have a red X. So you can play the game along with me. Okay, so but taking in mind the scenario that we had before, so let me just quickly go back. You have a volunteer tells her mentor that she's been experiencing anxiety, trouble sleeping, and feeling overwhelmed, and that she needs some mental health support. We're using the same scenario. So do you document the concern and the steps taken? Yes or no? Some green ticks. Excellent. Reactions are working. Fantastic. Yes. Perfect, full house, easy one to begin with. I think this is absolutely always in our interest. It's similar to what Michael was saying at the beginning around you have these ideas and the actions that you take, but actually being able to quantify those and keep them is equally important. So absolutely. The second one, offer the volunteer a private, calm space to talk about their concerns without judgment. Do you do this? Yes or no? I'll let you vote. Okay, we have some yeses, we have some nos. We have a mix. Okay, this one was a trick question because yes, you want to give them space to share and talk about their concerns without judgment, but in a private setting, this is not a safeguarding best practice. It should always be in a space where you can be seen by another colleague, another adult, another child, if it's in a youth environment. We should never isolate individuals for safeguarding reasons so that we can be sure that it's seen by others and our actions are safeguarding compliant. So I started with an easy one and then I tricked you with the second one. Let's see if I get any nicer as we go along. The third one is, should we guarantee confidentiality? So green for yes, red for no, or red X for no. Yeah, we see some no's. Yeah, a few red X's, a few yeses. Okay, so we have again a mixture here. And the answer here is no. We should never guarantee confidentiality. So often when somebody reports a safeguarding concern or anything of that matter, guaranteeing confidentiality actually puts you at risk in the sense that you may not be able to escalate when it needs escalation based on the risk, the immediate risk to the person or to the organization. And secondly, it's highly unlikely that you won't need to tell somebody else at least to be involved. And it creates a false sense of trust in the fact that the individual feels that they are sharing based on that it will never be shared or heard again. But the reality is in order for you to appropriately address the safeguarding concern, you would need to possibly be able to share that with as few people as possible, but still with other people, depending on the situation and the case. We'll pause for Q&A at the end, I promise, in case any of this is a bit you want to contest. Next one, tell other volunteers about the situation so they can keep an eye on her. So do you tell other volunteers about the situation so they can keep an eye on her, or don't you? So a few yes, a few no. Great, and thank you for playing along with me. It's very helpful to see the reactions. So the answer again here is no. We don't tell all volunteers about the situation so they can keep an eye on her. This would be an unnecessary break of confidentiality. We don't need to share with anybody that doesn't need to have that information because they are part of an investigation or they can prevent immediate risk. So in this case, other volunteers don't need to know about her reality. She can feel empowered to express and share with people she feels comfortable to share with so that they can offer that support. But that's not something that would come from the sending organization, the hosting organization. And we wouldn't encourage openly sharing by you as the person having the responsibility. There's only a few more, so don't worry. Would you delay contacting the sending organization because you want to see how things go? So a couple no's. Yeah. So again, in this situation, somebody has come to tell you that they're experiencing anxiety and they're not sleeping very well. Would you delay contacting the sending organization? Great. Lots and lots of no's. I unfortunately tricked you again this time with this particular one because it depends on your case management outcomes and the facilitated support process that you have in place. And what I mean by this is that this may be the first time this individual is reporting how they feel, and your initial response is you provided them with the support that they needed, and they are managing and being able to feel comfortable, etc. And actually, it was a minor thing. It was just 2 or 3 nights of loud noise in the street where they live, and they're not they're okay. They just needed to express it and have a little bit of time. And the reason we say this here is it's a trick, because sometimes you also do need to absolutely inform the sending organization immediately. And this is where there is a case exactly where your case management process has shown you that this isn't a more serious concern. Your investigation has highlighted that this isn't probably something beyond the lack of sleep and anxiety. And that is where you would definitely need to contact them without delay. So it's a bit of a gray zone, which is unfortunately sometimes the reality when it comes to safeguarding, because it can be case by case dependent instead of a policy that we follow blindly. I think I have two more and then we will wrap up. So, do you ensure the volunteer knows who in the host organization they can reach to for psychological support? So, do you ensure the volunteer knows who in the host organization they can reach to for psychological support? Green, 2 greens, 3 greens. Perfect. Great. Absolutely. You're all spot on. This is exactly what we would do in making sure that the individual knows. It might not necessarily be psychological support, but whatever support system you have, whether you outsource psychologists, therapists, you have a platform, you have a provider, or that there's somebody in-house that you use in these cases, they should absolutely be aware of who they can contact. Last but not least is involve as few people as possible. Do you involve as few people as possible, or don't you involve as few people as possible? Green, lots of greens. Exactly, spot on. So I made it a nice one for the end because we already talked a little bit about this. We always try to involve as little people as possible in any of these kinds of circumstances or situations, almost in the same way you would with a HR situation, when it's somebody's personal well-being, when they come and confide in you. Even though we don't guarantee confidentiality, we do our best to make sure as little people know and only those who need to know. Okay, that is the end. Oh, wait, before I give you my extras. That is the end of a very quick game. I will pause just briefly in case anybody has any sort of questions or wants to pick up on any of these where you see that blurry gray zone before I give you 5 do's and don'ts that are additional to these. Okay. Then I will leave it with you to marinate a little bit. Sometimes you'll also uncover these points will conflict a little bit when you're managing safeguarding situations, but that's also when your policy and your process also help guide you in that approach. So a couple of do's and don'ts so you don't feel you leave the session empty-handed. There's many that you could look for, many organizations that you could take best practice from. But here's a couple that I personally live by and I like to use as well in my safeguarding practices, as well as within the guidelines that we created. So listening actively and without judgment is absolutely one of the sort of founding principles of anything when it comes to safeguarding and well-being. Taking every concern seriously, no matter how small it seems, because sometimes people use the entry point of something very small to start to express or to share something bigger, or to feel or build psychological safety with you as an individual, to then be able to take that conversation further. And even if it is small, it could be very significant, and therefore taking that concern seriously and documenting it through appropriate process, is the best thing you can do for your own processes and your organizational integrity. Follow your procedures. If you have reporting and documenting procedures, safeguarding procedures, always follow them. Even if it feels a little bit like on the spot or ad hoc, the best thing you can do is try your best to use that as a guiding framework so that you don't lose sight of what you're trying to achieve and you remain objective in processes that you are following. Again, make sure you have policies and procedures that everyone is trained to follow. This is one of those things that always, more often than not, gets deprioritized in our trainings and the work that we do, because we are busy people. We prioritize and have lots of things that we're trying to do all at the same time. but actually having everyone understanding that things exist then enables that culture to start to be nurtured and to grow as lived behavior. And so it's really, really important. This sometimes more than how do you file your expenses. Your policy and procedures in safeguarding is actually, in my opinion, a priority. And then lastly, it came up in the beginning, but do act promptly. And we were talking about the role of the host organization or the mentor. It's do act promptly to ensure any immediate risk is mitigated. So you may have in your safeguarding processes, and if you take a look at the safeguarding guidelines, you'll see that we have what we classify as minor, moderate, or major safeguarding concerns. And this is where you'll see that particularly in the major, it's about preventing immediate risk. And that might be where you need to remove someone, isolate someone, suspend someone. There are many different things that happen, but it's about preventing immediate risk. Then some don'ts, and some that will ring some bells because we talked a little bit, is don't promise absolute confidentiality. Some information may always need to be shared for safety and for organizational purposes. Don't ignore or downplay a concern. It's important not to dismiss somebody. It's important not to say, oh, everything will be all right, don't worry, or I've experienced that, so it's fine. This is really one of the quick fire ways to shrink the safe psychological space inside your organization and the culture of reporting in your organizations. Try not to make assumptions or diagnose, even if you think you know why. Again, by sort of trying to put words in somebody's mouth or trying to find the answer faster than the individual is ready for, this can again have the same consequences as the outcomes of point 2. Don't delay seeking support or escalating. So if it feels particularly beyond your role or outside of your capacity, it's not your role. So escalate and seek support. And then lastly, we have it again in the examples, don't ignore or delay responding to concerns. So sometimes we can receive something, let's say in our inbox, and we think, oh, this is a bit big to deal with, I'm not sure what to do. And then we move on to something else, and we could delay coming back to something that could be immediate risk or require rapid follow-up. This brings me to the end of my do's and don'ts. Very sort of quick, and I apologize that now we're running quite fast through a lot of theoretical content, but hopefully it contextualizes some of the conversations you've been having in the breakouts around what already exists and how are you using it well, and what things where you could actually increase the culture in which everybody in your organization lives by some of these do's and don'ts based on your reality. But the last thing I want to leave you with, and I think for me it's so important, is exactly the title in terms of limitations and opportunities. There is so much that you can do, but there are also things you cannot control. And to be able to keep in your mind this idea of proportionate safeguarding is, for me, the biggest gift that you can give to yourselves, is that you cannot do it all at once. You cannot control or change everything. And you need to do that within the level that is appropriate and reasonable for your organization, its context, the stakeholders you work with, the capacity that you have. And so here it's about balancing. It's about balancing between the mission and the delivery and the work that you do with the safeguarding obligations. So taking the time to put that, matching the level of risk with the context that you are in, and trying to make sure that at least what you are able to do to begin with or what you want to strengthen from here is in line with that, is appropriately in line and is reasonable reasonable to ensure that protection, but not to create unnecessary processes or barriers or obligations or responsibilities on mentors or volunteers. And you can see here a very, very simple example linking us back to our case study before. A volunteer expresses mild stress or anxiety. The mentor slash hosting organization, provides regular check-ins and support without immediate escalation. Or a volunteer discloses self-harm or abuse, then immediately full safeguarding procedures are followed. And this is a case of what we must do in those contexts, but that is proportionate to the reality of your organization on whether you have an experienced mentor, whether you have procedures in place, and so on.